The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
I think I've always believed in the paranormal, but the deeper I get in this field, the more questions I uncover. I started a program called Seeking the Paranormal in an effort to gain insight and dialogue from others interested in the same things as me. And while we've learned a lot together, the questions still remain. So I'm bringing my thoughts to the airwaves, and I've brought along my friends, Adam and John, to share in the fun. Together, we'll tackle the tough topics and debate the evidence as we continue to seek the paranormal. Hello, and welcome back to Seeking the Paranormal with Sarah, Adam, and John. I don't have any clue what episode we're on, number-wise. 20-something, I think.
Any number.
Yep. It doesn't really matter.
953.
No, not that one,
I
I don't know, we're getting up there pretty far. We're doing good. According to the Iowa governor, we're coming down to the tail end of the COVID pandemic crisis.
That's funny, because the number's still going up.
Actually, we're going down now.
Yeah, it comes on the testing.
I only look at
yeah, in Lynn County. Yeah, because no one ever crosses county lines. So
we're building walls.
And we shall see what happens once, because everything can open back up on Monday, right?
May 15th for Lynn County.
So we'll see what happens then, because I predict that all of these people that have been curled up in their houses for the past 3 months are going to come out and come back into contact with the rest of us, and they're going to all start getting sick again. So.
Yep, wave 2.
Yep. That's what I think is going to happen. But who knows? I could be wrong. I was trying to see what episode we are on, and I just keep staring at my phone like it's just going to magically pop out at me.
It might.
It could.
If it's magic. If it's magic.
So, oh my gosh. We've done 25 episodes already. That's impressive. So this is episode 26. Good for us. Good job, guys.
Yay.
All right. Well, tonight, per John's request, we are talking about reincarnation, and this is another good example of a topic that I thought was going to be kind of just real basic. And then the more I started reading, the deeper and deeper this got, and I have like 5 pages of notes and questions that occurred to me while I was reading. So, we'll start with the obvious. Do you two believe in reincarnation?
John, go ahead.
I'd like to. It's one of those things I'd like to. But I just can't take that step and go, yeah, I believe in it. Because, as we'll talk about in this program, there's too many things that I don't get about it, that it's why. It's, you know. But on the other hand, I've also had some explanations from people that are more knowledgeable than I in the subject, that have said some things that have made me think about it very hard. So,
as a relatively smart person, I am shocked to hear you say that you don't.
what,
Especially after reading everything I've read. Like, I don't know how anybody cannot. But I'm going to respect your opinion. We'll get further into this. I am eager to hear.
Wait a minute. You just say because I don't believe in it, I'm not smart. That's not passive aggressive at all.
Oh, goodness. Oh, that was a train wreck waiting to happen.
We'll wait to hear your reasoning behind that. Adam, what is your stance? Are you with John on this one?
No, I'm actually not. You know, to have...
He's laughing.
What?
He's laughing.
Oh, that's alright. To have some of the, oldest religions kind of have a lot of basis as far as Buddhism and Hinduism and, the 1.25 billion people that are between Buddhist and Hinduism, it's kind of hard to not, buy into it and think that this is a good possibility of a thing. I mean, even though I was born and raised Catholic, and that's not how the Catholic religion, what they believe in, I think it's a legit thing. I think it's definitely something I do believe in, for sure.
Well, obviously, I concur. Since the beginning of man, people have been talking about reincarnation. The work that Ian Stevenson has done through the University of Virginia and then all of these other prestigious schools in America, America alone, the work that's been done. And then I had to wrap my mind around some science stuff, quantum physics and stuff. It just makes way too much sense. All right.
But it also doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. Is the problem.
Okay. All right, I'm ready to hear why.
Oh.
That's you.
You, John.
Well, so I'm not saying it can't be possible. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I can't believe it because there are a number of reasons. And it depends from which school you're looking at. So basically, fundamentally to me, is if you are put on this earth and you do things and you make mistakes and you're supposed to learn from the experience, is the general gist of most of those religions. The problem is if you don't remember your former life, you're going to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. It's like doing Spanish 3, failing it, and then having your memory erased of everything you learned in Spanish 3, and then having to take it again.
But you're making an assumption that that's how that works.
Well, that's all we've got to go on, isn't it? I mean, there are no written rules.
There's science. There's science in the study of reincarnation.
Yes, there is, but they haven't proven it yet, so they're assuming.
Okay. I disagree with you. Go ahead.
Well, science hasn't proven it.
No, I know. I think that if you're basing your opinion on the fact that you think that just because we may not consciously remember mistakes we've made in past lives, then how can we be learning now?
No, it's very, to me, it's not a good system because you're going to repeat mistakes. And why not? If you're going to be reincarnated, that's fine. I'm not against that. But why can't you, what's the point? Why can't you be reincarnated and still remember what you did before? And then say, yep, I screwed that one up. Don't you ever think, oh, I wish I could be 10 years old again and start again?
No.
You never wanted to go back and start again?
No.
But
so
don't you think
they're doing with reincarnation, except that you don't remember? And it's
but here's my thought process behind that though, because don't you think that sometimes your subconscious mind tells you, oh, I shouldn't really do this, but then granted you have the free will and the choice to make the decision to go right or left, but don't you think that you may not have a visual memory of what actually happened when you went the wrong direction, but your subconscious tells you that you shouldn't. So don't you think that could be a form of a sign telling you did this wrong in your past life, so now you need to go this direction?
No, I mean, we know that there is such a thing as intuition or a feeling, but for me to make that jump to say, oh, it's reincarnation that's doing it is a pretty big leap for me personally. Because
Well,
there's
of course.
lots of other things that you pick up subconsciously that have nothing, that you don't know that you're picking up. So for me to make that jump to say, oh, I must have done that wrong in a past life, that's what's making me feel this way now, I can't make that jump mentally. Not me personally.
Okay, so, but you acknowledge that intuition exists, and can we all agree that mind does not equal brain? That your mind is something different, your soul, whatever your personality is something different than just your physical brain?
I'd like to believe that. What?
OMG. I can't.
But again, that's another thing that we haven't proven yet. We're trying to prove it, but we haven't. And if I'm very...
Then how do you explain all of the cases of, this is something that's been studied for so many, over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
How do you explain, all the studies where, there's studies that prove that with the power of intention, just our minds can influence even a computer. If sat down in front of a computer that chooses random numbers, our intention can affect that to where they've got tests that show with that intention, they're getting over what you would expect, like 51% of the time, they're getting what they're intending to. And if you've got a couple who are together and who are trying to influence the numbers that come up on these random machines, it's even higher than that, 52 to 53%, which is higher than chance. How do you explain something like that then?
Well, I wouldn't use reincarnation to explain it.
I'm doing steps here. I'm not talking about reincarnation right now. I'm just talking about the fact that your mind is something different than your physical brain.
Well, no, because that doesn't prove that your mind's different to your brain. All it proves, okay, if you are influencing a computer, for example, how do you know it's not your brain that's producing whatever it is?
How would your brain do it?
Well, the same way it moves my arm.
But how do you know that's your brain?
What, that's moving my arm?
What scientists don't know, as I've learned recently in reading this, scientists don't know what makes us think to do things like move your arm and then it happens. Now, they can route the message from your brain to your arm that makes it move, but what made you want to make that decision?
It's the old argument of what is consciousness.
But that's the basis, I think, of reincarnation.
Yes, but there's a lot of ifs and buts along the way that have to line up for it to be true. And, we haven't got the fundamentals yet. We don't even know what consciousness is. So, and to explain the other stuff, how can people, there's so many examples. There's also a thing called, animalistic psychology. If you look that up. That explains a lot of the stuff. And they even do experiments to prove they can tell you what you're going to do a lot of times, even though you don't know, and you're like, it seems like magic, but it's not. It's just statistics and numbers and how people's minds work that they've studied. Now,
their minds are not their brains.
I'm coming across as a 100% skeptic. I'm not. I think all these things are possible, but where I'm drawing the line is to say that they're true. That's the difference, I can't say they're true because I don't know they're true. Are they possible? Sure.
But if you've got all of these tests and somebody's coming to you and saying, we've beaten the odds, we've done a bazillion tests, and that's just on consciousness, let alone on reincarnation, where they have hundreds of thousands of examples of people, kids between the ages of 2 and 5 who are talking about a past life. What would it take for you to cross that line then? Because I feel like there's been so much that's put in front of you.
But it's never been validly backed up. It's never, because, and here's, the flat baseline truth is, if scientists were working on this and they came out and they could demonstratively prove that the human mind could affect things outside of the body, there will be a Nobel Prize in it, and no one's ever got it. And no one's ever got any other challenge that people have put out it's never happened. The James Randi Prize is still open. Nobody's ever claimed it.
I totally disagree with you. I think there have been plenty of studies that have proven that our mind can affect things outside of our personal body.
Then why isn't it a given fact then? I mean, it's not a mainstream scientific fact.
I think it's not a mainstream scientific fact to scientists who refuse to get outside of their materialistic box.
That's true, but the problem is, so if you're going to, I mean, the bigger claims you make, the more proof you need to substantiate those claims. Basically is how it works.
Okay, but personally, I mean, what would it take for you personally to cross that line?
First I'd have to see it. I've never even seen it. I mean, lots of people claim that they can do it, but I've never seen it. I've seen lots of people claim lots of things, especially, do what we do, but, I've never actually seen someone really do it in front of me. That's one thing. And the other thing is that people do these tests and these, until I see an acknowledged body of scientists say yes, then, I still have to, you have to set and our limits are different. Yours and mine but I have a bar that, I've got a, before
But there are scientists who have said that consciousness is real, that your mind is separate from your brain, and that reincarnation exists.
There's scientists that said the world is flat. It doesn't mean it is. I mean, it just depends who. How many.
Honestly, I did not expect this conversation to go this way, so I'm taken a little off guard and not really sure where to go with people.
Well, that's why it's a discussion.
I know that, but I want to, I thought...
Possible. What I'm not ready to do is say it's true. Okay. There's a difference.
So, I guess, and let me back up just a little bit. So I did put out on our social media sites asking people if they believe in reincarnation. And on Twitter, we had 25 votes. 84% said yes. 16 said no. We had Diane which is at Diane Chambers, said, I lean more to believing the possibility of it. So she is Team John. And at Marian_Aiken said, you choose whether to come back. I suppose I can understand that a little bit too. So it does appear that, and I saw something today that I believe came from Bob Good's presentation that said 50 to 51% of the global population believes in reincarnation. So, which is half and half. That's fair. So, reincarnation basically is considered, and you would have, and what I was trying to get with John earlier, you would have to believe in a soul, which is separate from our physical body, leaves our body at death, and then inhabits another body at some later time. And this is different from possession in that a soul would basically inhabit another body at conception, or whenever you believe a soul enters a baby. Some people believe it's not until birth. Some people believe it's conception. Whenever. Regardless, starting out your entire life with a separate soul. Whereas possession would be you've lived your life and then somebody else kind of jumps your body.
That's wishful thinking.
I guess it depends on who's jumping my body.
Uh-huh. You are pervs.
No, I'm just saying. Like,
so I read 2 books. The first one was called The Science of Reincarnation by Bob Good, and I shared that one with you, John. Did you read any of that at all?
I got through some of it.
Obviously, you were not feeling it, because we're not on the same page at all. No. The reason I really like that book, and if you've not read up on reincarnation, I encourage you to read that, because I thought it had a lot of really good information in it, but he kind of dumbed it down so I could understand it, because the other book that I'm reading, I don't even know what it's called. I'll try to find it here. But it's a little bit over my head in some aspects, not in all aspects, but like talking about how the theory of relativity plays into all of this, and I was lost on that shit. I don't even know where to start here.
Well, the base question really of nearly everything we do in as far as like ghost hunting and stuff like that, the very real question of everything is, are we a product of our brain or not? So, that's because if we're not, then if we're a product of our brain, there's no such thing as ghosts, basically, and there's no such thing as reincarnation. So, and there's no such thing with a lot of things that we believe in. But, I believe that is a strong possibility through personal experience. You always try and push me to say it's true, go on, and I can't. But I do believe it's a strong possibility. And then the thing is with reincarnation then is if you're going to go down that road, there's a couple of questions that crop up to me straight away, aside from the public. There's the how, which, we can chase our tails on. But then there's okay, now, are you forced to come back, or do you choose to come back? Because if you're forced to come back, that's kind of shit. And then it's, and if you do come back now, out of all those people you said believe in reincarnation, a big chunk of them believe that you may not be human when you come back. So,
well,
you come back as an ant or an anteater.
No, the leading theory on that is actually that you graduate up. So we evolve. So you may start as an animal, but you evolve your way up. So you wouldn't be a fully functioning human and then go backwards. And I'm not saying everybody believes that. I'm just saying that is the...
Well, that's definitely not Hindu. Hindus believe you go up and down. So, and that's probably a big chunk of the people that believe it. Which is why Indian society had, for the longest time, the caste system, and they still have it, because your caste... So we throw around the word karma like crazy, but it's basically an Indian belief of you get your reward when you die. Like Christians go to heaven and hell, Hindus believe you'll either go up or you'll go down. So your karma when you're reborn, you can go down, which is why they have the caste system. So anybody in a lower caste means that they were crap in their last life. Is basically where that comes from. So, and that's kind of a crap system. I don't like it.
I mean, why are you scared about going down?
Oh, sorry?
Okay, going down a class.
I believe in free will, and I don't mind being, atoning for my sins, but, in a cosmic system like that's a little awful when you haven't been given a guidebook to start with. Unless someone said, well, there's all these religious books, but yeah, there is, but which one's the right one? You can't penalize me if I don't know what the laws are, or what the rules are.
So I wrote down this quote from one of the books I read, I think. It would have been nice if I put where I got it. So it says, the theory of biological reincarnation states that our unit mind has persisted from the time we were unicellular organisms until today, and continued evolution needs, I'm sure that was supposed to be evolutionary needs, to occur before we attain unity with God. So I guess most people would believe that the point in reincarnation is to become one eventually with whatever your higher power is, whatever name you put on that. And so, as John alluded to, by learning life lessons or fulfilling whatever needs you might have or your soul would have, basically, you get all of these chances until you've got everything that you need that would bring you to a place where you can be one with the higher power. And in fact, I mean, animals is an interesting thing because the animal one is the one that kind of hangs me up because there's so many examples of animals acting really strange. So monarchs, for example. Monarch butterflies start out in Mexico. The eggs hatch and the little butterflies fly off and get about halfway to Canada, and they end up dying after laying eggs, and then their kids go all the way up to Canada, lay eggs and die, and then their babies, do backwards. But they seem to just know intuitively where to go because that same family line, I guess, if you will, ends up coming back to where the first eggs were laid. So, I mean, they're like coming back to exact same places. And how else would they pass that along? They weren't there. They weren't alive to tell their eggs, hey, go here. This is where we were at.
Well, they can't talk either.
Well, that is true. There is that as well.
They may have their own language.
There's been study of, I can't remember the one bird that tripped the trigger, but so a lot of animals, they look at them and they fry their brains and they figure out, oh, hey, look, they got an extra sensor for gravity, they got a sensor for the magnetic field and stuff like that, and that's how they navigate. But there's one bird that can navigate and they don't know how it does it. And it's the same, I guess, with your example of butterflies. So these are all very good, examples of there must be something more. There's also another, which I kind of like this idea, an idea of what's called a racial database that we're all plugged into. So butterflies have their own database of knowledge when they're born. Spiders have it. They're born. Who shows a spider how to build a web? I mean,
right.
How does that work? And one guy did to try and prove if there's racial database, he sat a bunch of students down and gave them all these Japanese letters. And these weren't Japanese people. They were just normal, I was going to say normal people. That's a bit unfair. They're all from the West. And and they were just asked, is that a true Japanese character or not? Now, 50% of them were, 50% of them just made up stuff. You should, on odds, get 50-50. And he found, increasingly, people were getting more than 50% correct, which he was trying to say, this proves we have a racial database that we all kind of plug into. People were intuitively knowing these Japanese characters because there are enough Japanese people that read these, that it's kind of coming through the line. So, all these things are possible, but there's so many ideas and theories, to say which one's real. Besides that, I mean, butterflies reincarnate and know the way.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So one of the questions I had was how, that brings to question, I guess, how they're able to do that and come back to, and it's the same thing with salmon, they come back to their original, I don't know, wherever they lay eggs. So how do they know to do that? So one theory would be that they have a soul that they're reincarnating, and that's how they're getting that information. Is that too far-fetched? I don't know, because how else are they doing that? Nothing makes, I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
No, but it makes it a possibility.
Sorry, I'm dropping things.
It makes it a possibility, but it doesn't mean that's what's happening. It's an idea of how that happens. But, I just don't, what's the point? Whoever started this all in motion with the reincarnation was, okay, I'm going to create these beings or whatever, and then they're going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Why? And as far as becoming one, I don't want to. I like my individuality. I don't want to join up with anything else. Because then I'm not me anymore. Why would I want to? That's just my personal opinion. I don't want to join with other things. Why would I?
You might not have a choice.
Yeah, exactly, and that's my whole point. I don't like any of these ideas because you have no bloody choice.
But I think you do have a choice. You have a choice in how you live your life.
Yeah, again and again and again, though. So I don't get the point of reincarnation.
But you have a choice every time. I guess that's...
Choose differently every time? Just see what it's like? And then...
Absolutely.
I mean, you may not know the choice that you made before. Consciously, you may not know that. But subconsciously, that might be in your head. Like, okay, I'm not going to kill that goat because that's wrong. Where your past life, you're like, yeah, I'm going to kill the goat. Who cares? But I'm just saying, like...
Or you're reincarnated as the goat.
Or you might be reincarnated as the goat because you killed the goat before. Who the hell knows? I mean... But I think...
that makes more sense. You see, if now, I can't remember her name. Gosh darn it. There's so many names. One lady was explaining that you sign a contract before you are born with people. All the people we know and deal with, usually we know each other, let's call it, on the other side. And then before you're born, you say, well, we screwed this up. Let's do, these are the things that we want to achieve the next time round. But then when you are born, the blinders come down, you don't know what the hell you're doing, so, and then you die, and then you come, it's, then you see if you fulfilled that, whatever agreement you have. So.
Well, and, I mean, I disagree with the fact that we have to always just stay within the same people. And actually, the other book I was reading was Reincarnation, the Science of something, I forgot already. But it asked, how do we know that, I mean, we obviously know that there has to be other planets out there with life forms. How do we know that we're not reincarnated from those planets, for example? How do we know that we've lived on life? We don't. So, I mean, it's a good question. And, I mean, really, it sounds far-fetched, but when you think about what we're talking about, is it really?
No, it's a probability, if you want to look at the numbers. I mean...
So, yeah.
Well, and I think that would lend a little credibility to the fact that, I mean, that kind of, if you can lend to the theory that other planets have life and maybe those planets are smarter than we are and are farther advanced, I mean, that might lend a little light to how do we come up with our ideas and how was Einstein so far ahead of thinking from other people at the same time? Is because he was reincarnated from somebody from another planet who was way smarter than we were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a good point because Einstein was an example, but they taught the books that I read actually talked about, both of them individually talked about, your savants, your geniuses, your, people who just have children, especially who have these ridiculous abilities that just make no sense. And, Einstein came from a very average family. His children were very average. There was no explanation for how he was as smart as he was. And so a lot of people have attributed that to his process in life. There is a kid, his name is Christian. Let's see if I can find it real quick. It starts with an H. Christian Herrig, something like that. he is probably maybe like 12 or 14 now, but he has claimed, I mean, at a very young age, he claims to Christian Haupt, H-A-U-P, is believed to possibly have been Lou Gehrig. Ian Stevenson has done a huge amount of work in studying reincarnation, and he actually started the program at the University of Virginia. He has passed now, so other people have picked up where he left off. But he noticed that a lot of the times when children start to talk about previous lives, they're doing it usually between the ages of 2 and 5. By the ages, between 7 and 8, it kind of starts to
fade away.
I guess fade, yeah, exactly. And that's why as adults we typically don't know unless we go under hypnosis and do past life regression, which I totally want to do now. But so at the age of like 3, Christian was starting to talk about, he was showing an exceptional talent for baseball, but he was also able to start talking about things that his family was able to match up with Lou Gehrig's life. They ended up taking him to, I don't know if it's a museum or what, but he knew all these people and all of these things that they've been able to look at and go, yeah, that does match Lou Gehrig. I mean, and this child had no clue who Lou Gehrig was, but he's talking about things that happened in this man's life, which he had no business knowing. I watched a video, just a very short video. He threw out the first pitch at Dodger Stadium, and I believe he is still the youngest person to have ever thrown out a first pitch, but he was like 4 when he did it. Acts like a totally normal kid, just has information that he has no business of knowing. Einstein's kind of the same way. He had no business being as smart as he was, and yet look what he has contributed to the world.
I agree. But I'm going to play devil's advocate.
I expect nothing less.
Well, we can all say everything kumbaya, but no, but I think if there are, it can also be explained by mutations. Mutations aren't always bad. Some are good. So you have, he gets born, he has a slight mutation, he thinks differently. It's kind of like, some kids are have autism.
Mm-hmm.
It goes the other way too. Mutations aren't always bad. So, in fact, in evolution, our species went through an unexplained huge jump in intelligence in a very short amount of time, which nobody's been able to really explain. Our intelligence gain isn't just a nice little straight line going up. It goes in jumps, a couple of times in our evolution. So, and there's even theories out there that it could have been a virus, because once again, viruses aren't always bad. They can affect you, and, you get mutated isn't always in a bad way. So, there's an explanation. Now, I have no more proof of that than anybody else has for reincarnation. I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate in that, it could be something else.
Well, and I know that your materialist scientists will argue that somehow a brain injury takes place, whether in utero or right after birth, that causes these mutations that cause people to be, kind of freaks of nature and their abilities. Like, I didn't realize, I knew that Rain Man was based on a real person, but just a side note, because this blew my mind that this was even humanly possible. Apparently this person could read a book and would actually read both sides of the pages separately with his eyes, but at the same time, and kind of had a photographic memory about it, which is just ridiculous to me. I have trouble concentrating on one page with both my eyes. My eyes separately doing 2 separate things, and then it computing in my brain, I cannot even fathom.
I have a hard time concentrating on one word with both my eyes, let alone an entire page. For God's sakes.
I don't know. If you read when you're drunk, you try to concentrate on 2 books at the same time. That's 4 pages. No. But, And then people, there's a lot of, like the savant people, they think totally differently. So, for example, there's people when they do math, they don't think of numbers, they think in colors.
Yes.
They associate them totally differently than we would. And the problem with, one of the reasons why we cannot identify what consciousness is because we can never experience someone else's consciousness. So we just assume that everybody is the same as us. We could be totally different consciousnesses, we'd never know it. And that's why we cannot define what consciousness is, because you can never get outside of your own consciousness.
Yep. And we all have brains, and since we're all different...
Oh, no.
I win. So, I hesitate to even start this because I'm not smart enough to really understand it. So, I'm scared I'm going to start, sharing this information and get, yeah, we'll come back to that. I'm not ready to.
Go on to the quantum.
Yeah, that's where I was going with it, and it's just...
You got the microtubules and that one.
Scary stuff. Waves and particles and pulsing and...
Yes. Everything's out of control.
So, one thing I will share, though, and I say that I don't know if I can get on board with all of this, but by saying that, I'm kind of a hypocrite, because part of the reason why I think it's crazy that people don't believe in reincarnation is because of the sheer amount of people, children especially, who have been studied and have shared life facts of their previous life, and they've turned out to be verifiable. So, Michael Newton is a doctor who has studied, now his focus was more the transition period between lives. So he wasn't so much worried about the 2 lives or 5 lives or separate lives that you've lived. He wanted to know what happened in the interim. So he says that most of his subjects, and this has been confirmed with other people who have done similar, I guess, studies. So they have kind of put together all their information, and the consensus seems to be that there's different steps that we go through when we disengage from our body. So the journey begins with death, obviously. And that's called...
Sorry.
So anyway, the journey begins with death, and that is obviously departure. A lot of subjects report on a tunnel and the white light. That those things didn't just come from nowhere. We didn't just pull them out of the air. People are physically seeing these things, and especially out of body experiences. A disproportionate amount of people say that they go through a tunnel and that there's a bright white light. So apparently that's a thing. The next step is called homecoming. So his subjects reported that that's where you meet your deceased relatives or people that you've loved. And people who are having near-death experiences, this is typically where they get off the bus and get sent back. But during the homecoming, after you've said hi to everybody you love who has moved on, you're met by your soul guide. The next step is called orientation, which is a period of adjustment from a corporal form to a spiritual one. So basically, you're kind of learning what it means to be a soul and to be back into that position again, I guess. And then the next step is transition. So each soul has a home with a group of other souls that have commonality. And basically, we'll call it you find your tribe, basically. They then will go before soul councils that will evaluate the prior life, not judge it, they evaluate it. And then they are further put into kind of classes, and then comes placement. So that's where they determine what level you're going to, what is expected of you basically in your next life. So it's kind of like going from 6th grade to 7th grade and so forth. After that, you go to life selection, and that's where the soul leaves the sanctuary of the spirit world and you're making another trip back to Earth. Then you choose the body that you want to be in. I don't know if there's like a catalog, but you figure out you want to be male or female, what your health is going to be like, where you're going to be, so on and so forth. And then preparation for embarkation, which is basically just prepping yourself for what's ahead, and then rebirth. And we all know what that is. Popping out your mama.
Then you forget all of that.
Huh? Yeah.
And then you forget all of that. So why bother prepping if you're going to forget it?
Most people do. Now, obviously, a lot of this information is coming from adults who have gone under hypnosis. Hypnosis is one of those things where it's a little shaky on whether it can be believed or not. There's a lot of good that has come from people under hypnosis, but there's also, you're very susceptible to suggestions. And one issue that has arisen with past life regression under hypnosis is that when you are in that position, you obviously want to do well and impress the person who is putting you under. So you feel more pressured to come up with a life, and then you may subconsciously be creating one instead of actually having or, reciting a life that you lived in. And again, it may be on a subconscious level, maybe something that you learned in 5th grade history class that you didn't even remember, today, but you'll spit that out and be like, oh, yep, that was my previous life. So I don't know. I'm kind of edgy about the whole hypnosis thing, even though I still super want to do it. But it's the kids. The kids are the ones that get me.
Yeah. So that's my thing. The one that hooks me and makes me believe it's possible, and I don't just go, wishful thinking, is the actual studies for kids. So, I mean, some of those kids are just, you're like, it's gotta be real,
Right. Absolutely. Well, and as I mentioned, Ian Stevenson has led a huge study of this. And, he's not the only one. His catalog when he resigned from the University of Virginia was more than 2,500 cases of children. And a lot of them have, and this is what's also interesting, so they'll remember this life that they had, but then a lot of them, especially if their previous life ended in something very violent, have birthmarks or deformities that coincide with what happened. So you might have a 5-year-old who recounts their past life and says, by the way, I was shot in the head, and where he was shot in the head, he now has a birthmark. And then they go back, find that other person's family, and the wife says, yeah, my husband was shot in the head right there. I mean, it's crazy. Crazy.
It is, but there's not enough of them.
What?
Well, really, if that's the thing, why aren't there more of them? There aren't very many of them.
Well, he said, I believe
it's the population of the world. I mean, how many billion of people?
Well, I understand that, but I believe he said 60% was the number that I saw that he wrote, of the 2,500 and some that he tested, 60% had credible knowledge that they could go back and actually find that person. I believe it was 60%. That's a pretty good number when you think about it.
It is, but you've got to also then ask, where did he get the 2,500 from? Were they a pool of children that had reincarnation stories, or just random children off the street? Because 60% of 2,500, all of them have a reincarnation story, and 60% of them were verifiable. that's a totally different statement than saying 60% of all children have a reincarnation story.
Well, I don't think he said 60% of all children.
No, of the ones he tested. But that's what I'm saying. 60% becomes a much smaller number if he's only picking from the ones with stories.
Right. And the book that I'm reading now actually kind of addressed that, and said it would take up so much time, space, and effort to list out all of the cases that ended up being nothing. But that doesn't mean that you can discount the ones who are something. And the other problem is, especially in Western culture, when we hear our children start to talk about their previous life, we're very quick to dismiss it as imagination. Somebody told you that, you saw it in a movie, especially because the main religions in the United States specifically don't talk about reincarnation. We talk about resurrection. So part of it is, parents who aren't willing to listen, aren't willing to entertain, that's actually what's happening.
And they are. I mean, the cases are extremely vivid. The question that goes into my head is, if it is reincarnation, why are only these few children remembering it?
But I don't think that was my point. I don't think that they are. I think that, number one, it has to be reported at the time when they're having these memories. Usually, again, either as adults we dismiss it, or I remember I worked for a plumbing company and the owner was telling me one day about how her son, when he was young, had talked about his previous life. Well, she's telling me this 10 years later, and that's what a lot of people tend to do. Well, by that time, they've gone through their discontinuance phase where they don't remember like they used to, and it's too late to really do the studies on them without going into hypnosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be a common thing, though, and it's not. I guess is the point I'm trying to make. We think it might be, or we'd like it to be, but it,
But I think it's more common than what the numbers can show, because a lot of people just don't believe in it, and so therefore, when their child starts talking about something that happened to them when they were Cleopatra, people are just, that was just an example that popped in my head because of something that I read earlier, but, they're just like, yeah, whatever, and they just shrug it off. But I think, in order for us to get a good number, we would have to convince everyone, hey, when your child starts talking about these things, you need to jot this stuff down, and you need to try to research it. But that's never going to happen because unfortunately not enough people will even buy into the idea that it's a possibility.
What I'd like to see happen, and once again, because it's paranormal, you never get the bloody funding to do it. I'd like to, so if that's the reason, I would like to get in contact with, let's say, child psychiatrists or child psychologists, and then we don't have to know the names, but how many people that you treat have, how many of the kids that you treat talk about past life. Get the numbers that way, maybe.
I think that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I think it'd be very interesting.
Because that at least would give you a quantitative number, and the psychiatrist has talked to the kid at the age, and the kid's telling him the stuff that you may not talk to his parents about. So, you've got a bigger hit. Something like that, I would like to see.
So, currently in the United States, Stanford, Princeton, University of Virginia, and University of Miami, and I'm sure they're not the only ones, but those universities currently have ongoing research into reincarnation, and it's actually part of their curriculum. I don't remember what the classes are called, but, those are some pretty prestigious schools that are looking into this currently.
Mm-hmm.
So, beyond us arguing about whether it's real or not.
We're not arguing. We're discussing.
Arguing means we're raising our voice.
That's true. I haven't gotten to that point yet. So
discussing possibilities.
For the sake of this next question, let's assume that we can all get on board with reincarnation or the idea of it. Does that then change how we view ghosts? And the reason I ask that is because as I'm reading this, our souls seem very conscious. I hate to say that word because that's what your soul technically is your consciousness. But they seem to be very aware. I mean, people are making them sound very aware of their surroundings and their situations. And if you believe in reincarnation, can you believe in ghosts the way we've kind of, the paranormal community puts them out there? As you know, not realizing they're dead or feeling like they're trapped or what have you. Like, I kind of felt like those things weren't compatible.
You know, I was thinking about that earlier, actually, and I was like, okay, so if our soul, our consciousness, however you want to put it, goes through this process of however long it takes to be interviewed and then, you know, reestablished, I guess, then could ghosts even be a possibility? Because they wouldn't ever be around because they're constantly being recycled back into another life form. So there is a little question to that, I guess. And I guess the only way that we could say that if these people's idea of how the process works is right, I guess I should say their idea of how it works would have to be wrong in order for ghosts to be real. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes, but it doesn't say that just because they're in the soul or the spirit world, we'll call it that. Just because they're in the spirit world doesn't mean that they can't have contacts. I don't know if I feel like they're compatible, but at the same time, I think it's important to note that it doesn't say that they can't be in contact.
Yeah.
I think it's totally possible to have both systems running concurrently. Because when you die, and so you go through all these supposed steps, which is in huge amount of detail, I like that. Where did all that detail come from? But here's the thing. Who says that you have to go directly there? Or,
right.
And then with every system, even one as detailed as that, you have people that slip through the cracks of the system. Or, not all systems run smoothly and efficiently all the time. So, the other thing...
Really? They don't? Huh.
No, they don't, I'm afraid. So, I mean, I can't see one mixing out the other, if you see what I mean. I think they both can be. But my personal theory of ghosts, if they exist, is that they are in like a dreamlike state, because that covers all the bases of how everybody that reports a ghost sees a ghost. You see some doing the same things they did when they were alive 100 years ago. You get some people, you get background chatter as if they're talking to themselves, as if you're there or not. Some are totally aware of you and will, react to you. And to me, that indicates a dreamlike state. So let us say, if someone dies and they leave their body and they don't go on to wherever it is they're supposed to go and then get recycled into another body, they're there, but they're not 100% there, if you see what I'm trying to say. It's kind of like you're in a waking dream. You don't know, you're not quite sure where you are, or you are. Sometimes, you go through, like when you can talk to someone in their sleep and they'll answer you, but they're still asleep, that kind of thing. So I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think they both can be at the same time.
Maybe that would lend a little credence to the "you have a choice."
Yeah.
Maybe the spirits that are still here had the choice and decided, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, well,
that sucked the first time. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, but if you get to order your next body on, Amazon.heaven.com, why would you ever come back and live in, a war-torn village in Africa? who would choose that? I don't get that. Is there something you want to learn of, being starved and being a drugged up kid soldier at 7? What are you going to learn doing that?
A lot.
Really?
Maybe
Yeah.
you think. But maybe you think you can go back and change things. Like maybe you're like, I can make that better if I can get there.
Maybe you were just a really shitty person in your previous life.
Right.
Exactly.
And you're like,
So
I want to go
yeah.
kill people.
Maybe your options aren't as open as depending on what you did. So, yeah.
I mean, there's all
Imagine
kinds
what
of
Hitler
stuff.
must have come back as.
A Jew. So I'm just going to ask you guys some of the questions I wrote down. Can you believe in reincarnation and not believe in psychic abilities?
Yes.
Yes.
Do either of you care to elaborate on those answers? Hi, it's a podcast. Share your thoughts, please.
Oh, I
Show you're working.
Yes.
I thought this was like just quick, like Jeopardy type. Quick answer.
Yes, no, yes. Bye. So, thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Nice try, both of you. Nice try.
Well, why are they? Once again, those are not connected in either way. Really, I mean, psychic abilities and reincarnation. Why are they connected? Why must they be connected?
Well, in my opinion, because our mind is part of our consciousness, not part of our brain. Those psychic abilities, which not all of us have perfected, but all of us contain the ability to use if we work on them. I don't want to say this. So basically, because our consciousness is what puts out that psychic ability, that's also what reincarnates. So to me, I mean, yes, you can choose what you want to believe in, obviously, but I think that what gives us each the ability to have those psychic abilities, I guess, is our consciousness, and that's what reincarnates.
Yeah, but, I mean, it doesn't mean because you have a consciousness, therefore you must have a psychic ability.
We all have the ability to be psychic. I mean, and I guess it kind of depends on what your definition of psychic is, but we all have the potential to do that. It's just some people have realized how to do it better than others. It's like being able to meditate. I can't meditate to save my life, but I have the ability to do so within me. It just takes practice. Same thing with psychic abilities.
I can't buy that one. No, I'd love to, but I can't. I mean, that's...
I could put so much information in front of you that it would be absolutely mind-blowing to anybody else, and you will still say, nope, I can't.
I can put lots of information in front of me about 5G causing the coronavirus. It doesn't make it true.
You mean that's not what's causing it?
No. I'm still on 4G, so I'm good.
So we kind of touched on this previously. I'm moving on, by the way. If animals, monarch, salmon, your dogs, your cats, whatever, do things that would lead us to believe that they have some type of minds, they can do pretty amazing things. For example, that's why people have therapy dogs or dogs that can tell them when they are going to have a seizure and so forth. Does that mean then that they have a soul similar to a human's and can reincarnate as well?
Personally,
why wouldn't they have a soul? I mean, we talk about consciousness and all that fun stuff. I mean, I think they, they dream, obviously. We've watched our dogs chasing stuff in their sleep. So yeah, well, I mean, why not?
Yeah,
Makes sense to me.
If it's a thing, why shouldn't they? You know,
So we'll take this a step further then. There is evidence that unicellular organisms make choices. For example, they can move out of the way of what would be a predator or move into light because it will help them somehow. At what point do we say something has a soul?
I think self-awareness is the key for me.
Well, but that was the point. I mean, if they're making a decision, then they have self-awareness because they are showing that they're making a decision on what's going to benefit them.
Well, you can do the same with software, to be honest with you. You can build a robot and you can, program it to move towards the light and it will,
Right. You can make them do it, but they don't know why they're doing it.
I'm sure the doesn't either.
Huh?
I'm sure the amoeba doesn't know why it's doing it.
What is it? I don't know. God damn it. I wish I could find that in my notes. But they have reason to believe that they know why they're doing it. I can't remember without finding it directly in front of me. But they have reason to believe that they are showing some signs of self-awareness. I mean, how do we determine what
self-preservation and self-awareness aren't the same thing. I mean, all animals are, well, I'm going to say all, most living things are programmed for, first off, reproduction, second off, stay alive so I can reproduce. That's it. That's ingrained in every living thing, from, tree to an amoeba to people. Now, self-awareness is the sense of self, not the sense of I have to stay alive. There's hello, my name's John, I'm me, I think, I'm an individual, and all these things. But you're aware of yourself as an individual, which amoebas aren't. So.
I disagree.
I know.
I agree with you to a point. I do agree with you that the sense of self, absolutely, 100% am on board with that one. But at what point do you determine that that's what's happening, that these animals are showing that? What do they have to do to prove to whomever, whatever, that they have a sense of self, and therefore at that point you would consider them to have a soul? Silence.
That's deep. That is deep.
I'm telling you, this topic got real fucking deep for me.
It's a very open question. So the question at the moment in the technology area is, at what point is software / computers become a sentient being? They get, what point do they become self-aware? There's a thing called the Turing test that says if you can talk to a computer without seeing it, like on a phone, and not know that you're talking to a computer, think that you're talking to a person, that's called the Turing test. That means that a piece of software is reacting the same way a human would.
Because it's been programmed to, not because it thinks.
Well, amoebas don't think. They haven't got a brain. I mean...
I'm telling you. I'm going to find this and send it to you.
The thing is, so there is no difference between a hardware body than a biomechanical body. So, in a way, in its nucleus and its DNA, an amoeba is a chemical, organic machine that is programmed through DNA. So,
okay.
That's what I'm trying to say is, now, on the surface, they are the same thing.
Let's take the amoebas out of it.
Okay.
At what point does an animal show you that they have a sense of self? So is there a line? I mean, is it 2 cells that we're saying, okay, yes, now you have a sense of self, so therefore you have a soul, and therefore you can reincarnate if reincarnation exists?
I don't know. That's philosophy for thousands of years, to be honest with you.
This is what I loved philosophy. Like, I wanted that to be my minor. I love philosophy, and I feel like this topic is so full of it, and I love it.
Well, I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
Famous line out of philosophy on that one. But machines think.
So, they don't, but that's okay. So,
So they do.
how do you think new souls are created, or can new souls be created?
So, if there is such a thing as a soul, there's no way of answering that. Because if you look at it, if you say, okay, we get reincarnated and then include all the planets in the universe, how many souls are out there to populate all of those, and then we're going to include animals too, so we've got to populate those as well. I mean, that number is just mind-bogglingly crazy high. So,
But they had to come from somewhere. Do you think they've always just been? If they exist, have they always just been?
There's no way of knowing that.
Yeah.
I couldn't make rich. Because I'd just be making it up if I did.
Yeah. Well, let's just make stuff up. Somebody will believe it.
We can speculate. I mean, here's the thing. So, a very nice theory is that time and space are joined. Time happens all at once. We just see it linearly. So if time really does happen all at once, then everything exists all at the same time.
Oh my god, this is relativity. And
yeah, but there are no new ones, no old ones, because that's linear time.
Holy Christ. Talk about hurting my brain.
If time happens all at once, then there are no new ones or old ones. Just that we're seeing time in a line, you see.
Yeah. That's some deep
my
shit.
Answer. Yeah, that's an easy way out of that too.
Right. Do you think that out-of-body experiences prove reincarnation is possible?
I don't think it proves or disproves. I'm not certain that out-of-body experiences are something possibly different. I don't necessarily think that they're the same thing.
So can you believe in reincarnation and not believe in out-of-body experiences?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive either.
Yeah, I don't think they have to go together.
Okay.
Did that go sideways or something? The look on your face was like, I was expecting something different there.
Nope, I just...
She's been doing that all night. I'm going to turn the monitor off.
Let's see.
I feel like I'm failing a test. It's horrible.
I know, right? I only got a 63%.
So, if reincarnation exists, and if we believe in a soul, and then therefore your soul can leave your body, does that open the door for spiritual possession? Now, I'm not talking about demonic possession. I'm talking about spiritual possession. So, for example, the Watsika Wonder, just in case people aren't familiar with the Watsika Wonder, I will sum it up very simply. Basically, this teenage girl died, and her parents were grieving, and then this other girl came and said, hey, I'm now possessed by your daughter's spirit, and girl 2 actually lived with dead girl's parents for like a year because she said she was possessed by dead girl, but then her parents came to grips with everything, and dead girl's spirit went away, and girl 2 went back to her normal life. It's a much better story. Look into it on your own time. But if you believe in reincarnation, and therefore believe our souls can leave our body, does it open up the possibility for spirit possession?
Once again, my personal view is they're not mutually exclusive. Because if the spirit can leave a body, that doesn't on its own prove reincarnation. And reincarnation on its own doesn't prove that on this plane the spirit can leave the body. So, I'm not saying both are impossible. I'm just saying, I don't see what the two have to do with each other. The only thing that all these things have in common is our is our essence produced from our brain or not. It's the only thing in common with all of
I
it.
feel like you're just scared to commit to things. Does your wife feel like you're scared to commit?
What wife? You actually totally made it up, right? Just so I fit in socially.
All right, last question. Can you still have a residual haunting by a reincarnated spirit?
Wouldn't the spirit be reincarnated by definition? If we keep reincarnating, at some point that spirit had to be alive, which means it probably had a life before that.
So yes.
What was the question again? I got so wrapped up in the pedantics of it all. I was like, wait a minute. What does that all mean?
Wait, what'd you say?
And you still have a residual haunting by a reincarnated spirit.
Yes.
I've seen a spirit staying behind and being reincarnated at the same time. So
I don't think residual, though, in my personal opinion, I don't think residual means that the spirit itself is left behind. I think it's just an imprint on time for one reason or another, but I don't think that that's necessarily the spirit, because by the definition of residual haunting, it doesn't interact with people. It's just doing its own thing, like a record skipping on a consistent basis.
If it's not a spirit, it's not a haunting.
But I think it was previously a spirit. But now it's just an imprint on time.
Which all happens at once.
Sigh.
I told you this gets deep.
I know.
All right, can you have a haunting by a reincarnated spirit? For example, I looked up on YouTube, and there are people claiming to have EVPs from Lou Gehrig. And Christian, whatever his last name is believed to be the reincarnation of Lou Gehrig. Can you have both?
Well, if all these things are true, I would say no, because the spirit's actually in an actual body at that point. So, how can, let's say, be in two places at the same time? And
So,
if that's true, why doesn't it happen more often?
By investigating and continuously reaching out for spirits, are we preventing them from reincarnating?
No.
Not if they have the choice.
Yeah, I know.
If they're given the option, if they want to come back or not, and they choose not to, then we're not keeping them. They're doing it on their own.
So, another question that just kind of occurred to me that I was thinking about, and I don't think I wrote it down. One thing that Ian Stevenson, I did. So, Ian Stevenson's had universal factors in cases of reincarnation. So they were factors found in every culture from which cases have been studied so far. So culture was not a variable. It was just found everywhere that they've studied. So age, we talked about of the first, speaking of previous life, tended to be between the ages of 2 and 5. Age of discontinuance of spontaneous references to previous life was between 5 and 7. And then high frequency of violent death in concerned previous personalities. So basically saying that a lot of the kids who remember their previous life had a very traumatic or violent death. If those spirits are being reincarnated, and frequently very quickly because they can go back to their, wives or so forth and find their family, does that mean that places that had, like Villisca, a very violent or dramatic ending, then are not likely to be that haunted? Because the probability, it appears, of them being reincarnated, especially quicker.
But I mean, you're asking for...
I said before I started asking questions, we're just going to pretend we all agree that
that's fine,
exists.
Okay, it exists, but what it's the details, this structured detail thing that's been set up that we don't really know, so it's hard to make a quantitative call on,
But you're talking about somebody who's been studying this for 20 plus years, and this is what his cases are telling him.
Okay.
If Ian Stevens is correct
Stevenson.
Stevenson, whatever, I was close.
Dude, you just had an orb go by.
Who did? Which one?
Probably. He's in our bedroom, and Lord knows it's dusty.
Oh, yeah, the fan's on. Son of a. If he's correct on his findings, then no, the Liska would not be haunted.
Well, it's been 100 years too. I mean, it's been a long time.
Well, granted, I mean.
See, and that's the thing. How long do ghosts hang around if reincarnation's a thing?
Well, that was one of my other questions, but I bypassed it.
Yeah, I mean, It depends. It depends on if they have the choice or not. I mean, again, there's the lingering question between reincarnation and ghosts. I mean, if they have a choice to stick around, then I guess they could stick around forever.
Yeah, and if they choose to stick around, that means reincarnation sucks. Because they choose not to do it.
Well, either that or they just didn't like they really enjoyed their past life and they think they got nothing better to do. It's never going to get any better than that one was, so I'm just going to stick around.
Oh, that is a dismal, horrible thought. There's nothing better to look forward to ever in the whole of eternity than what
you don't know. I mean,
but there are people who act that way, who believe that.
There's a lot of people that act that way.
No.
And maybe there's a fear factor involved in that.
That's why people stay in super shitty relationships.
Yeah, I mean, the fear factor is that what if I do it all over again and I end up in a war-torn country in Africa and have to live my life that way?
So there is
maybe there's a fear factor behind it,
which takes away the choice thing. It's like,
well, and I know part of it, and going to beliefs that the paranormal community has put out there. Some people believe that the reason ghosts exist is because they are afraid to have to, I guess, stand up for the decisions they've made in their lives. They're scared of being judged or scared of having to explain themselves or what have you. And so that might explain why they don't go, because one of the steps there was to go in front of this spirit council and talk about the life that you've led. So,
yeah, I can see that, but the numbers. I mean, there'd be a lot more bloody ghosts, really. If that's the art. I mean, there's a lot of people. To use your example, a lot of people in shitty relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So why aren't there more ghosts? I mean,
maybe there are. We just haven't found them yet.
Let's go look.
Well, I'm just saying, like, we haven't found the right way to communicate yet. So,
well, and just because you're a ghost and in the spirit world, just because you're a ghost and in the spirit world, does that mean that you have to be reachable by those of us who are not in the spirit world? We don't.
Yeah, who knows?
Somebody's got to make up those spirit committees.
See, we're just adding variable on top of variable on top of variable, and it's like,
so not fun, Jonathan.
To plug in. No, I mean, it's fun musing about it, but, my problem is, I can throw an answer at it, but, I could say, well, the answer to that is apple. Because it didn't make any sense, nor would any answer that.
I know, but I guess what frustrates me a little bit is, and not enough that I care to argue with you about it, but I feel like there's so many people who have actually devoted a large amount of time to this and who have actually done what you've asked and have done the research, have done the case studies, have done replicable, I can't say that word, you know what I'm trying to say, things. But you can't commit because it's not enough.
No, they've found evidence, strong evidence. I've read a lot of the child cases and that, and I'm impressed by them. But as that author said, these things allude to that's what happens. They do not prove it, and that's the problem. Because you have to try and find an experiment that actually lays down proof, and it's not the same as alluding to. It's like anecdotes. So, and I'm not undermining them, and what they're doing is right and correct, but it's still only a first step to, okay, this is the direction we got to look. This is what we think is happening. It's the observational science. This is where we think it lies. So let's start looking over there, which no one really, it's okay. And I linked it on the Phantom Science. There was a discussion, and it was over NDEs, which is pretty much the same thing. Where do we go when we die? People have been there, seen it, and have these stories. And a lot of them overlap, even across cultures. So their biggest thing is we know now by doing these things that we do where we want to look and what we want to do. And we go and we try and get a grant, or we'll go to the hospitals where people are dying and say, can we do this and can we do that? And in which case it will never get past the ethics board because you can't treat dying people as lab rats. So it's very hard to actually take that next step. So as far as respect of that guy putting 20 years into it, yes, and he's got the observational and the testimonies and everything else to say, okay, it sounds like this is what's happening, but for me, and there's the actual scientists that want to go there, they haven't gone there yet because there's too many obstacles in the way.
Are you drinking Diet Coke?
Yeah.
I realized that and I got terribly distracted. I do not disagree with you to a point, but I also am very impressed that you're drinking Diet Coke.
Well, it's the only drink left
because quarantine?
No, because we drank all the proper Coke we kept in Morgan last night.
Fair enough.
I'd like to say I'm trying to lose weight. Yeah.
All right. Well, we could go back and forth on this topic forever. I will put the links to the books that I read because I really loved them. And also I found a video that I tried to watch today, but then people kept dying and getting sick and hurting themselves. So I got distracted. But I'll put the link to that up on our social media as well because I thought it was kind of interesting. Because I guess I didn't really realize what to expect with Bob Good. Reading his book, like I said, I loved how he kind of dumbed it down, but then watching him speak, he's actually incredibly intelligent and much more than I thought he would be. So I'd like to share that. And then if the boys have something they want to share, they can do that as well. So.
Well, thanks, like I say, to underline that point I was trying to make about scientists doing the work, and I always come across as a dick, but I appreciate that people spend 20 years doing that. But,
I understand.
On Phantom Science's Facebook page, I put a link and there was a discussion there. There was a woman who had near-death experience. There was a neurologist there that didn't believe in near-death experience. There was a professor there that spent his whole life studying near-death experiences all over the world. And then there was another guy who was a CP who worked in a hospital where people had heart attacks and stuff that was trying to do studies on it. And all of this thing comes together where you see, and it's really good because you have one that's had the experience, one that doesn't believe it, two people that are studying it, and they're discussing, okay, this is where it points to, this is what could be happening from the skeptic, saying, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying, but it could be that.
Mm-hmm.
And also they discuss moving forward, how do you prove that? And that is, it was just a really good discussion. So.
Fair enough. We know where to find it now. So our next topic, I want to get this deep on EMF. I understand the basics of it, but I want to know why it's something that we look for so hard. And I think that especially for new people who are coming into the field, I feel like we should have a better understanding of what we're looking for and why. So you two little science-minded folks will probably lead that discussion more than I, but I want to get real deep on EMF. So
it's all 5G.
Right. That's what we're going to do. All right. Anything else you want to add before we...
Well, let's see. Reincarnation. Maybe in the next life.
Jesus. All right. Well, if you want to follow up with John, especially to read, is it an article or did you say it was a video? Those people having that discussion.
I can send it to you and put it on Seeking the Paranormal if you want.
Well, either one. So you can, anything related to John and Phantom Science, phantomscience.net. And that'll have links to all of their social media sites. And then also they have their podcast on Sundays at 7 p.m. Central. And then if you want to get in touch with me, which I've done a really shitty job of staying up to date on my See Paranormal Sarah stuff lately, but I will try to make a better effort. So you can get a hold of me on Twitter and Facebook at See Paranormal Sarah. It's S-E-E Paranormal Sarah with an H. And then, of course, the three of us are at Seeking the Paranormal, and we are on Facebook, Twitter, and now Instagram, because we're fancy.
I don't know what that is.
Not surprised. Nope. All right. Well, we will leave it at that because we have gone well over an hour per usual. And we will talk to you next time. Until then, keep seeking the paranormal.
We're out.
Thank you for listening, and be sure to follow Seeking the Paranormal on Facebook at Seeking the Paranormal, and also on Twitter at Seeking the P.